So Cyberpunk Edgerunners has been out for a bit now, and I just watched it in the middle of March, about 5 months after it came out on Netflix. While it was on my watch list for that long, maybe just a bit before, and just say I loved it, loved the whole show. I watched the whole show in about 2 days, as I had to stop watching it in the middle of the final 3 episodes to do the whole sleep and school thing. But it was an amazing show, and I'm not normally into anime, even though I'm in the anime club at school. That's just hang out with my mates on the Tuesday afternoons. Cyberpunk Edgerunners is the type of show to finish off with a sad but good ending that is shown in the opening of the show, well, the title sequence, but I didn't pay attention to it until my rewatch of the show, and that is David being shot in the head, as he does at the end of the last episode, by Adam Smasher. Smasher is an Arasaka merc that has been in the shadows of Night City since the early 2000s, but in the opening, it isn't Adam that is shown shooting David, it is someone else. Well, I believe, in my opinion, that is Faraday, who was played by Giancarlo Esposito, who was also Moff Gideon and Gus Fring in The Mandalorian and Breaking Bad. How Studio Trigger and CD Projekt Red finished off the show left me wanting more out of this dark but fascinating universe. So I went and I looked for more content and learnt that Cyberpunk is a genre, but the universe of Cyberpunk was originally a tabletop RPG, and the history is established in 3 of the RPGs released, but there were 4 released in total. And these 4 tabletop RPGs are just as fascinating dark as Edgerunners itself, and the tabletop games take place in the years of 2013 with Cyberpunk 2013, 2020 with Cyberpunk 2020, 2045 with Cyberpunk Red, and with the last tabletop game is set in an alternate reality called Cyber Generation, or the game's called Cyber Generation, that also takes place in the year of 2027. But back to the show itself for now. Edgerunners draws you in those first 2 episodes, and they both finish off with cliffhangers that make you fall straight into the next episode. And that is what made me barely realize I'd watched about 4 episodes for it before I went to do basic things such as eat and drink. And the characters in this show are perfect. They are flawed and feel like real people, but also not. The female characters aren't shoved in your face, and you aren't made to think, oh, these are really strong people, they go and save the day every time, but are shown they can hold their own, like David or Maine, and they do save Maine a few times throughout the start of the show and the rest of the way through. David Martinez is the protagonist of Edgerunners and is a likable character and is hopeful even after all the loss he encounters and bullying he endures over his life, but also, most importantly, in the first 2 episodes of the show, and he struggles to really harm people at the start of the show, unless they bully or threaten him, or anyone he cares about, such as his love interest Lucy, who is an amazing character on her own, which is a reason for his high tolerance for cyberware, because he actually cares about people, but that eventually catches up with him in episode 8, when he kills an innocent scientist who was just in the room. David loses himself here, and the audience knows that cyberpsychosis has caught up to him. David manages to fight it off for a bit longer, but the cyber skeleton sends him over the edge. David is a tragic character that fell victim to the cycle of violence that is Night City, and he died as a legend, but not as mythical as his killer, Adam Smasher. David died so Lucy could escape, and because he realized that he would not make it out of this and not be gone so far over the edge, he would be dead anyway. In the 3rd episode of the show, we are introduced to Maine, and you can see he's ticked off that David took the Sandever stand he paid for, but kind of lets go of it when he finds out David's mum, Gloria, who was Maine's seller, died the day before. So right off the bat, you can see the human side of Maine, and he gave David the chance to work off his debt before taking the Sandever stand, but still pays David fairly and treats him like the rest of the group, and really acts as a mentor for David, who at this point has no other family left other than these people he's just met. And throughout the 4 episodes Maine is in, and after he dies, you can see the impact he has on David and how he has grown and leads the group after Maine's death at the end of episode 6. After he has started to undergo cyberpsychosis, a terrible condition that nearly everyone who abuses cyberware eventually undergoes. And cyberpsychosis is tied to psychopathic tendencies, so the more psychopathic tendencies, the quicker the fall into cyberpsychosis for everyone, apart from Adam Smasher, a guy that seems to be basically immune to cyberpsychosis. Cyberpsychosis is a condition that is brought on from wear on a person's nervous system by cyberware, which is called Chrome as a nickname for it in this universe. Cyberpsychosis causes people to become more psychopathic and not value human life and identify more with machines than other people. And these people will become very violent and start to turn away their loved ones because they view them as inferior. Everyone seems to have a different tolerance level for cyberware, with Adam Smasher and V from Cyberpunk 2077 seeming to have the highest tolerance for cyberware. And some other people are only able to handle a few enhancements. People like Smasher was able to handle their entire body becoming mostly metal and then becoming known as full Borg due to how much cyberware or chrome they have attached to their body where they're more machine than man. MatPat put out an interesting theory about cyberpsychosis on his film theory channel. The video will be linked down below in the section below that says cyberpsychosis is brought on by the software, not the hardware people install into their bodies. And that's why some people don't go psycho from extreme levels of chrome being added to their bodies. And there is strong evidence in the game 2077 itself and a music video that goes along with the song Let You Down, the end theme for a lot of the Edgerunners episodes. That shows a quick hack called cyberpsychosis that turns people into cyber psychos. But another theory says that a person's worldview and overall positivity and disdain for killing will make them more immune to those who already have psychopathic tendencies before installing any cyberware, which also does make sense with the universe. Cyberpunk Edgerunners was a real tragedy in the sense. Everyone ends up dead from the violence that is Night City. Night City is definitely not a safe place. It's probably worse than Gotham City. That's saying something, and it doesn't have any superheroes like Batman to protect the innocent. And the poor are really fucking poor. They do not have a chance in the city. They are on the streets. They have to work for scraps and rarely ever have a home. Whereas the rich are a whole other level of society. They run everything. And the entire world is run by these mega corporations, which are fucking insane, and they run everything pretty much. But the soundtrack in Edgerunners was pristine and not one song missed, and each song fit the scene perfectly. I've added numerous songs from this show to my permanent playlists that I listen to nearly daily. My favourites of them being the opening song This Fire by Franz Ferdinand and Let You Down by David Podsiadlo being my favourite songs from the show. I know they're the opening and closing songs of the show, but they just hit that hard. Cyberpunk Edgerunners has quickly climbed into my top 10 favourite shows of all time, up there with the likes of The Mandalorian and The Owl House, which as of writing this, The Owl House finished 10 days ago and The Mandalorian Season 3 will finish tomorrow night. I have videos coming on those two shows soon. First one will probably be The Owl House, and after that, The Mandalorian Season 3. Audience and critics agree with me with their scores, scoring it very high on Rotten Tomatoes, with critics giving it a 100% fresh score and the audience giving it a 95%, which is insane. I would highly recommend this show to anyone that is 15 and up, as it is rated MA 15 plus here in Australia, and I'd rate the show personally a 9.5 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10. I fucking love the show. It's one of the best I've seen.